Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. And my name is Kim, and I also have arthritis. I have a rare autoinflammatory disease called adult onset Still's disease. I've been in the insurance industry for just over 10 years. I did both things like contents, house insurance, as well as life insurance. Predominantly in the last couple of years, I was doing travel insurance up until about a year ago when I stopped working due to health and looking after my granddaughter, which is hence why I'm here today. So to kick off, we're going to look at pre-existing conditions. So all insurers have different definitions of pre-existing conditions. It's really important to get a clear understanding of each insurer's definition, as this can vary for some, it can be any condition within the last 2 years, and that can vary to anything that you've received treatment for within your whole life. So it's really important to get that clear definition from that particular insurer. Do be aware that pre-existing conditions includes all conditions, operations that have removed the actual cause. So, for example, if you've had your gallbladder removed, you still need to advise the insurer of that. Likewise, appendicitis, although those parts of the body have actually been removed and it's no longer an issue, you still do need to let them know about it. Likewise, if you've had a diagnosis that's since been resolved or it's been managed by medication, such as high blood pressure, which is now being managed by medication, that still needs to be advised, and also mental health conditions. Even if this has been managed by counselling, for instance, that still needs to be advised as well. Also, you need to let the insurer know if you're on any waiting list or if you have any pending test results or if you're awaiting a diagnosis at that point. If you choose not to have your pre-existing conditions covered, you need to if you choose to have your pre-existing conditions covered, you need to disclose all pre-existing conditions, as they need to know the entire risk that they're agreeing to. And if they later were to find that something was missed, this can give them a right to decline. So the general rule is they either cover all or nothing. So that's an important thing to know. Now, on the flip side of that, if you choose not to cover pre-existing conditions, you need to be very aware that most insurers have a common clause that if you choose not to cover pre-existing conditions, the insurer will not cover any claims directly or indirectly related to a pre-existing conditions. Now, with many of us, we're taking things like immunosuppressants. This means theoretically they could decline a number of situations and link them to our pre-existing conditions. For example, if you pneumonia or infection and you're on, prednisone or any other type of immunosuppressants, they would argue that this is due to your pre-existing condition and decline it due to that. Likewise, if you've got another condition that makes you more susceptible to any other type of illness or injury. So that's something to be very, very aware of. That's quite a grey area as such. Okay, so So moving on to cancellation. Sorry, I moved through that so quickly. Cancellation. Now, it is really important to organise cancellation cover as soon as you've paid any expenses in advance. Now, this is to make sure that you have cover in place in case something unexpected happens before you depart that stops you from travelling or means that you need to alter your travel dates. Once again, this does differ between insurers as an option with some. With some, it's an automatic conclusion, and it does also differ in the amounts of the level of cover. So it pays to also check that you've got an adequate level of cover, depending on the amount, the cost of your travel, including your accommodation, your tours, you know, the full package cost. So it's something to check all over. Now, this allows you to recover the costs paid in advance for situations like illness of yourself, of your travelling companion, death of a relative, natural disaster at a destination, car accident on the way to the airport. So it's a number of unexpected situations that could occur prior to travelling. Now, once this is organised, it's also important to advise your insurer of any conditions that occur between when you organise the policy and your departure date. So, for instance, say you get appendicitis 3 months after you've organised the insurance and you don't fly out for another couple of months, you need to ring your insurer and let them know that that has occurred. So that covers that one off. Now, eligibility criteria. So for most insurers, you need to be departing from and returning to New Zealand. So they don't, in most instances, they won't cover one-way flights or departing from Australia, for instance. Another one is if you're doing a cruise around New Zealand, for instance, they generally will only cover international cruises, which is where you're docking at an international port. So, for instance, a cruise around New Zealand wouldn't be covered. It's important to check your age limits, especially with credit card travel insurance, for instance. Now, it's with the credit card especially, it's really important that you fully understand both your eligibility and activation criteria. Don't be afraid to get them to fully, explain that criteria and give you, the full scenario so you're quite clear that you've met that criteria as well. Generally, if you are travelling with partners and children with the credit card travel insurance, they need to be travelling on the same dates as the primary card holder, unless they hold their own card as well. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Now, in regards to things that you need to tell insurers, now there's quite a few that a lot of people aren't aware of. You do need to give as much detail in advance as possible. Now, anything such as safaris, treks, any private boat trips, like where you're hiring a yacht and staying out, or fishing trips, for instance, any trips to Antarctica. Any cosmetic surgery or elective surgery, which is starting to become a more popular thing overseas, that definitely needs to be advised. Also, any work of any kind, whether it's paid or voluntary, and even if it's just a trade show, you do need to advise of that as well. and any competitive sport of any kind. Now, there's also a number of any hazardous activities that need to be advised. Now, this is a list of some examples. This is not all of them, but this gives you an indication of just, you know, some of the types of activities that you do need to be mentioning if you're, you know, planning on trying any of these. So anything that you sort of have planned that's, you know, even if any slight risk, it's best to just let them know that that's, you know, in your plans, and make sure you've got that covered off. And it's always a good idea to get them to put it into writing so that it's really clear that, you know, you're covered for those situations. Okay. So the next thing is policy limitations. So things like terrorism, war, riots, strikes are often excluded. So it pays to always have a really good look at the exclusions part of your policy. In most cases, you won't be covered if you're going to be travelling in an extreme risk area. Now, to check this, you can go to safetravel.govt.nz, and if you just put the country in the field that pops up there, it will actually tell you there what the status is, and that's up to date at all times. That's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and essentially if they're saying do not travel, then it's extremely high risk, and that's the reason why an insurer won't cover you. So it's also a really good idea to check that out whenever you are travelling, and it's also good to put your details in there, just so that, you know, it's also a good site just to have all your information on there, just in case anything does happen as well, just as a safety precaution. Also, you know, also pays to check all your policy excesses so that you're clear on that as well. Now, laptops is something to just double check with some policies. They will only be covered if they're packed in your hand luggage, unless it breaches the transportation policy. For example, when you're on flights, depending on their policy, you with some planes, they, you know, you have to have it in your packed luggage. So if that were the case, then that it would be covered. If that was the airline's policy, for example. But aside of that, if the policy wording states that it has to be packed in hand luggage, other than that, it would need to be in your hand luggage, for instance, if you're in the bus or any other transport. You need to check the rules around the jewellery side of things. It's quite common that if they've stated in there that if you've got a safe in the room, that jewellery needs to be stored in there at all times. Also be aware of the limits on items such as jewellery. Alongside that is items such as hearing aids, laptops, and medical treatment. In saying that, many cases these items can be insured for a higher limit, but there would be an additional fee to do so. Also a good idea to check the insurer's policy on scooters use, especially if you're travelling to the islands, for example. It's a common thing that we see issues with. And snow scan is another one that often gets asked about too, and that does tend to vary between insurers. Some are quite happy to insure it as long as you're just in a standard commercial snowfield. With others, they don't cover it, so it's important to check that if that's something that's on your plans. Also, with some insurers, it's a standard clause that you don't leave items unattended, as this can void a claim with insurers. So just check for clauses like that as well. So just so that you're really clear on what they do and don't cover, essentially. Yeah, so that's just covering off there what I just said about the jewellery and scooter use and snow skiing. Now, so the tail end of it obviously is the claims, and that's the most important thing because that's essentially what we're getting travel insurance for. So it's really important to actually ask about this. I know you don't often think about it when you're purchasing travel insurance, but essentially this is what we're buying at the end of the day. So it is actually really important to know about this. Ask what the process is if you have a claim. Do they have a 24/7 claim number that you can ring? Are you going to be talking to people in New Zealand, or are you going to be, is it a toll-free number? Do they organise to pay those big bills? Especially if you're in the United States, they are significantly high bills. So you want to know, are they going to be paying those bills, or are you going to have to be paying them and then being reimbursed? Because there are differences there. And, a lot of us do not have those funds to pay those bills up front. So those are important things to know. And just having somebody on call that can, give you that assistance in those claim situations can be a huge benefit as well when you're in a foreign country and during those types of situations. Having that assistance with somebody who's got all of that knowledge there can be, it could just be really helpful in a terrible situation like that. So, yeah. Another good idea is to, keep the receipts of your purchases if you can, and photograph things that you're taking with you on your travel before you leave. Save them onto your hard drive. At least if you haven't got the receipts and somebody steals your items, it just can help with that claim process a little bit as well. So that's that sort of things there. Now, one thing I used to get asked about a lot was reciprocal cover. And, so I've done a little bit of research on this one here. Now, there is reciprocal cover between Australia and the UK. As neither reciprocal agreement provides full coverage, travellers, ideally should hold comprehensive travel insurance. Obviously that's a personal decision at the end of the day. Just so you know, I don't sell insurance and I've got no affiliation with insurance. So, it is a personal decision, and obviously for some of us, myself included, we can't actually get insurance with some insurers. Definitely when you're getting insurance as well, I do recommend trying around because, if you've got a number of conditions or then, just because you get turned down by one or even, 2 or 3 doesn't mean that there's another insurer that won't take you on board, because they all have their different levels of risk that they will take on board. So do try around. That's just something to be aware of as well. Sorry, off track a little bit there. Now, in regards to the reciprocal cover, Australia does have its limitations. Now, the ambulance is definitely one of those examples. I did have a client advise me that they had been, you know, you had to use the ambulance, just a standard call out, you know, and it was like $1,600. And I did read also articles about the high costs when it came to ambulance call outs. So that's one of the limitations over there. In the UK, there's also limitations around pre-existing conditions, dental care, GPs, and some medicines as well. So, you know, that's just something to be aware of as well. So, yeah, that covers that one off as well. So that's pretty much everything today. So thank you very much for joining me today. Now, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email them into the email address we've got there, info@arthritis.org.nz, and I'll be more than happy to answer those as soon as possible for you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.